Welcome, everybody, to the first ever show of Full Court Press. I'm your host, Courtney Mims. Get the name, Full Court Press. You guys, you get it. You get the picture there. I'm so excited to be hosting this show. You guys helped me with the name. I put that out there a few weeks ago. I said, look, I'm starting a basketball show. I need help with the name. This one won. So hands down, it wasn't even one of the options I gave you guys. And you all said this was the name you wanted. So guess what? We made it happen. This is the name chosen by the people for the people. And this is a basketball show for you guys. Look, I kept thinking about who I wanted to bring on first. You see the guy beside me here. And I said, I've got to bring on Kevin McPherson. I have to start off on a great note. And so we have to have our Hog Hoops insider, Kevin McPherson, joining me on the show. You know, Kevin, every time we do our little Hog Hoops report, I know you get to do it with Evan and Jacob and Alyssa, and they're awesome, don't get me wrong. But every time that we do one of those, we always get comments like, Courtney and Kevin should have their own show. We love Courtney and Kevin. So I thought it was only right that I bring you on for my very first guest of Full Court Press.
Look, I enjoy doing segments with you and everyone at Pig Trail Nation. Congratulations, by the way, on this. It's going to be fun. I look forward to it today, the first one. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for starting off with me. We've probably got some good news to talk about instead of bad news on our first go at it.
Yes.
That's going to probably help us, right?
It will help us. Maybe it will help with the ratings as well. I hope that because we're talking about some good news, and what Kevin is referring to there is if you watched any basketball last night, you probably watched Arkansas in action, as well as plenty of other SEC teams too in the SEC ACC Challenge. And the SEC, man, they dominated. We're going to get into that, but let's start off by talking about Arkansas's game. And they did take down Miami. It was a close one, though. 76-73, the final score. And Kevin, people shouldn't be surprised that this was a close one because we warned them on the Hog Hoops report this past Sunday when we were talking about this matchup. We said, look, we don't think it'll be a blowout win for Arkansas. We hope they win the game. It should be a win for them against a Miami team that's been struggling on a 4-game losing streak going into this matchup. But at the end of the day, they were still playing on the road in a true road environment. People were telling me that while the crowd wasn't crazy, there was still a crowd there. It looked like on TV. It was a good atmosphere. Kevin, I mean, this win, while it may not be a great win on paper, it was good for this team in terms of mentality.
I think it was. And look, I was disoriented as we went into this game. First of all, Stat Broadcast put out the starting lineups like you always look for. And Jaden Caroletwa, the true freshman who hasn't even been in uniform at games, he's in street clothes. We know he's part of the team. He was on the starting lineup. And I tweeted it out. I even followed up with, this could be an entry error when they plugged in the starting unit, maybe put the wrong jersey number in. So his name came up. And then immediately ESPN2's coverage, when it started, you see this close-up of Larinaga and John Calipari embracing each other, smiling, happy. And it was kind of one of those things that just threw me into a time loop. And I'm going back to Yacht Rock, and I'm thinking, this is Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald when they came together and said, you know what, we need to collaborate. I'm like, you're not collaborating tonight, buddy. You got to find a way to win a game like this. So I was already disoriented from those two factors. Then we get into it. Right? We finally get into the game, and it's kind of same old for Arkansas. Slow start, never lead. You know, you're down, you're playing from down. You got down 11 fairly early. You hit a bucket before halftime to get it out of double digits, get it to 8. You're down 9 early in the second half. You're still down 7 with about 7 minutes to go. And this is where we had talked about on our Pig Trail segment. You mentioned it. We both thought it would be a close game, but we also brought up the fact that Arkansas never led against Baylor. They were tied once or twice, never led against Illinois. Once they got down 11-0, they never got closer than 9 the rest of the game. Missed a bunch of free throws that might have helped them get closer, but they hung around, right? They just never could. And so in this game, you're down 7 with 7 minutes left, and you still have not led in any of these matchups away from home. And so we're kind of going back down the same road. And so you start getting closer if you're the Razorbacks. You get within 2. Then Miami scores and you're back down 4. Then you get it to a tie or close, You have an offensive foul turnover on one end. Miami coming hits a three. On the other end, you went from a 2-point deficit to 5, and you're getting closer to that 3-4 minute mark. And you're thinking, well, here we go again. They find ways to stay attached. And now, but what did we say in the Pig Trail Nation segment? I'm going to go back to that. I said the difference in this game, if Arkansas stays attached, they're not playing the quality of Baylor, Illinois, and those kind of teams that will find a way to maybe make more plays in Arkansas down the stretch and hold on to a lead. I said this team will be susceptible, and I say advantage Arkansas. And I feel like it played out that way. Arkansas, but you still got to make the plays. You may be good enough, and the other team, now 5 losses in a row, has its own struggles. But which bad team's going to find a way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat and not vice versa? And I felt like Arkansas said, we're that team tonight.
Yeah.
And it, Boogie Fland, it was a 7-2 run, Courtney, and he scored all 7 points. But how did Arkansas get there to even be in that range? Guys like DJ Wagner stepped up. Guys like Nelly Davis, who I think had his best game as a Razorback. And you got to look at that second half when Arkansas, as bad as the first half was, the second half, yeah, it took Arkansas a while down to the last stretch to get over the hump finally. But if you look at the totality of those final 20 minutes, 44 points, 8 of 14 from 3, 17 of 31 overall from the field. Your defense got better at times down the stretch and it wasn't back and forth as you closed it out. And so there were a lot of things and positives against two teams that are, in my own postgame on Hogville.net YouTube Live, kind of last 10 minutes and then postgame, I kept saying, these are two bad teams. Which bad team's going to find a way to win? And by the time Arkansas got over the hump, I stopped calling it a bad team, and I'm like, okay, so you're a not so good team right now, and you beat a bad team. So they flipped the script from being a bad team to just not good yet.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, because I told fans, I think it was a couple weeks back, I said, look, you've got to be careful about your expectations of this team. And even Coach Cal warned fans about that, because what do we know about this team, Kevin, is that we know there's a lot of talent on it, but what have they been dealing with? Injuries. And last night, it was so funny to hear Coach Cal in the post-game presser talk about Big Z, right? And Big Z did play some in that game, and I thought it was really impressive to see what he was able to do, even with his ankle. And he was just like, goodness, can you give us 10 minutes? And that's what he did. And I thought that showed a lot about him as a player. And we're going to get into what the players did, because I kind of want to break that down with you a little bit more. You touched on some of the positives, and we are going to talk about that. But it's kind of interesting because, again, people are going, what's going on with this team, Courtney? What's going on with them? And I go, well, Coach Cal said it last night. They've scrimmaged how many times? Twice. Yeah. Twice. And their last scrimmage was that second scrimmage was this past week. That's where Big Z got hurt. And so I'm going, man, if you can't scrimmage, if you can't do some of the things that these other teams are able to do, I mean, you're going to be playing catch up a little bit, right? You're going to be playing catch up with some of these other teams. And so I think this non-conference slate, again, like I've said before, like you've said, Kevin, going to show us a lot about this team. But what I liked last night was that they had the heart, they had the fight. And Coach Cal said this team has got to figure out a way to win these ball games. And that was me going, can they figure out a way to win this? And they did. And it was helpful to have some performances, right? And you mentioned Boogie Fland. He led the team with 18 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. You had Nelly Davis, who, again, I know people have been saying, hey, when are we going to see Nelly? When are we going to see Nelly with the production? I think he's getting more and more comfortable. That's what you want to see in these non-conference games. So that, yes, he is playing his best in the SEC slate, but he had 12 points. He was 3 of 6 from the 3. He had 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals. Look, he had a great game. You had DJ Wagner had 14 points, and I talked about Big Z coming in and playing on a bad ankle and contributing. There was a lot of positives to take away from this game. But like you said, I mean, Kevin, these players are talented. Nobody is arguing that. But for you, I mean, we know that this team has things to work on. The coaching staff knows they have things to work on. We're not saying they're perfect just yet. But did you like what you saw in that performance, at least right there from those guys in that second half?
Most of the second half, especially the closing 3 or 4 minutes. Look, Calipari can cry poor mouth about not having bodies and only, but he designed this roster with an 8 or 9 deep. And the fallback, the problem with that was always attrition. But it's what they've got. It's what they have to deal with. It is a fact that it's probably hampered this team a little bit to this juncture in terms of why we see so much disconnectivity in some of the minutia of how do you defend pick and roll? How do you defend pick and pop? How do you defend dribble handoffs? How do you move the ball on offense against zone defenses and some other schemes that teams have used to slow Arkansas down, and it looks discombobulated. Arkansas looked dysfunctional in that first half offensively. The second half was a bit different. So you like to see that you had because Arkansas has been a really poor 3-point shooting teams in first halves of games, whether they're at home against a mid-major or in these neutral site games against high majors, and then they're better in the second half. Arkansas wasn't just better in the second half. They were lights out from three, 8 of 14, 57%. But even Big Z, let's talk about him. 13 minutes. He didn't start. He had the ankle injury. He didn't start. 3 of 4 from three. We know that's his bread and butter on offense. He's an elite 3-point shooter at 7-2. But what I really liked about him in that final stretch when he did hit a 3 in the run. We got Arkansas within a possession, and then Boogie closed it out with a personal 7-2 run against Miami. But on the defensive end, Big Z got on the glass. He only had 2 rebounds. One of those was in that stretch where Arkansas had 3 or 4 consecutive stops. He got a defensive rebound on one possession. Arkansas comes down and scores. And then on the next possession, Big Z blocks a shot where it looked like there was a clear driving lane. And he kind of that's the one thing he does. He blocks shots well in space. But you're not going to do that on consistently throughout a game. You might have 2 or 3 of those, and it looks good, but he gets moved around a lot. There's other stuff he needs to work on. But at least for those back-to-back defensive possessions, it wasn't just what Big Z gave you in 13 minutes with 11 points and making 3 threes. It was defense and getting stops. And so that's some growth maybe. This is one, this could be an outlier. But Baylor and Illinois are 2 teams that were better than you. And it's only 2 games. And so those could be outliers later if you continue to improve and you get into the SEC, which we know is going to be jam-packed with quad 1-win opportunities night in, night out. You're going to pick up your share of those probably. But at some point you had to prove you could even beat a bad team. And right now Miami's not good. They're bad. They've lost 5 in a row, 3 of those to mid-majors. Yeah, they've been close. So part of that's probably them not knowing how to get to the finish line first either. But one of the teams that aren't so good or bad, however you want to phrase it, had to win. They're not going to have a draw in basketball.
And also
it won't end that way. So Arkansas was that team.
No, and I'm going to go back to the point I made just a little bit earlier about confidence. People said, why is this why do I classify this as a big win? Not because it was over a really great team, because it was big for these guys and their mentality and their confidence moving forward.
That's right.
Because they had not, like you said, a loss to Baylor, a loss to Illinois. That's looming over these guys' heads because they haven't been able to beat a Power 4 opponent. They haven't been able to do it. And so that is on their conscience, right? So they go into this Miami game, and Miami will give them some credit because they went in there, and I felt like, man, this team has a lot of fire in them. They're trying to end this 4-game losing streak. They're trying to prove to their fans that why you should show up to games and why you should be there. And so I think when you have a situation like that, that's why I was like, this is a recipe for a close game. But I'm happy that Arkansas pulled off the win, because moving forward, now you have that thing that was looming over you that you haven't beaten a Power 4 opponent. Well, that's off of your back now. You've done that. And also, it's a true road win as well, which we talked about that on the Pig Trail show this past Sunday, is that these are good things. Getting a win, while yes, Miami, like you said, it's between 2 bad teams. Which bad team wants it more? We're not saying that. I'm just saying they needed this, because otherwise, if they didn't win this game, Kevin, I'd be worried about moving through the rest of December and going into SEC play. I just worry about it. That's all. I mean, I feel a lot differently than I do now, knowing that, okay, they pushed through and they got that win. They did that. And Boogie, I'll say this too. I'll make this point really quickly before I pitch it over to you because I have another question about this. But I liked what Boogie said in the press conference where some reporter asked him right at the very end, what do you want to improve on, right? You're such a good player. What are you trying to improve on? And I liked how he said being a leader for this team and being a leader. And we saw him step up down the stretch and take over and be that leader. He's a freshman. We get that. But maybe he was sitting back a little bit to Nelly, Jonas Adu Thera, whoever he was sitting back to and saying, look, you guys are veterans. I'll let you guys, do that. No, they need you too, man. They need you to step up. You're the point guard. They need you to step up. I don't know if you feel that way, kind of seeing some growth there with Boogie right at the end.
Absolutely. Here's a couple of things. I think when Arkansas brought in Nelly Davis, it was assumed he was going to compete for a scoring title in the SEC and be a top five-ish kind of scorer, get up a volume of shots. And so you're kind of then saying, maybe he's the go-to guy. Maybe he's the guy you get the ball in his hands late. He has not looked comfortable. He had that second half, he looked the best he has offensively. But someone's got to step up and be that guy. Adu Thera, the leading scorer, he is not a shot creator. Unless you count A to B drives, getting to the rim and just, dunking or towering through people. But the game's too nuanced, especially when it's close late, to just think that that's going to work every time. You need a guy that can go create a basketball shot at any level. And Boogie Fland is that guy. So there's leadership as a floor leader and as a facilitator. And then there's leadership of who's going to be the bucket guy, who's going to go get you a bucket when you need it. Maybe Nelly Davis will become that as he gets more acclimated. Right now, Boogie Fland is the best option for that. I don't care who leads the team in scoring by average. Based on my eye test, it's obviously him. The other part about being a leader is coming back from a bad game and not adding another one to it. He had a sluggish game against Illinois, and what did he do? He responded. So I think there's multiple things here. I think the other thing is we talked about, DJ Wagner with his 14 points, that matches his season high. Boogie Fland made 3 threes in this game. That's really good because it came in the second half during the run to get back in it and win it. So those 3 combined, it was their best collective game as a very good backcourt, which was always thought to be the strength of the team coming in. But the other part is they collectively had only 4 turnovers. And when you look at Arkansas's self-inflicted wounds, the unforced turnovers, the game started that way. They had 7 first-half turnovers. They finished with 11, so only 4 in the second half. But those 3 combined only had 4 for the whole game. And so that tells you even more how good they really were, even though there are rough spots and they're not perfect. Boogie Fland's alley-oop attempt past Adu Thera on that final one of those late possessions is probably not the best way to go about it. Now, Arkansas got bailed out with a foul, but then Thera missed both free throws, and it was still a one-possession game. Having said that, it's not much you can complain about the backcourt. And on a night where Thera was struggling and not even finishing his drives at the basket, you saw the collection of Jonas Adu. His 12 minutes was the most he's played this season. Most of those were in the first half. Trevor in Brazil, 19 minutes, and he got a start. But you put them together, they had 31-minute combined minutes, 10 points, 7 rebounds, and a couple of steals. So, you were basically not getting that much production from either player individually, and certainly you didn't see enough of Adu to even have that 10 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals. In a game like that mattered a lot. So we can look at the guards and say, yeah, that's where Arkansas did most of its work getting to this victory circle. But don't sleep on that front court and some of those contributions. And we talked about what Big Z was able to do even at both ends.
I think you're exactly right, Kevin. Before we get too deep in the weeds on this game, we've got to look ahead, right? And so I talked about the confidence and what this win would do moving forward. And I really, really think it was huge in terms of that. Now you come back home, Bud Walton Arena, you can't overlook any opponent, right? UTSA is coming up. You can't overlook anything. But then you have another big stage to compete in and another neutral site game when you head to Madison Square Garden to take on Michigan. And, again, another opportunity for this team to showcase itself. I'm wondering what you think you want to see from this team moving forward, going into, the weekend against UTSA, And then going into next week and facing Michigan, is there something, sorry, my Zoom is yelling at me, telling me I only have 10 minutes left. Don't yell at me, Zoom, okay? I promise. We'll be done in 10 minutes, I promise. But I'm wondering what you want to see from this team moving forward, because it's like, okay, we're getting somewhere. We're starting to click. Here we go. It's starting to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
That was a very eloquent, gentle way of saying, Kevin, you're long-winded, please. Zoom's not going to have it. We don't have much time.
No, it wasn't that. The Zoom was being mean to me, I promise.
With all of Arkansas' struggles so far, remember 5-0 at home against mid-majors, but most of those games throughout Maryland Eastern Shore, Arkansas was in a fight midway through the second half, so about 30 minutes in, even in some cases later. But what has Arkansas done so far this year with 6 wins? They have not had a bad loss, which is where when we were at this point last year's team did a quad 3 loss. That would have been a quad 3 loss last night. The quad 3 win, even though it's a road win, doesn't help your resume other than the virtue that you didn't lose it. And it's just brutal on that postseason resume. So Arkansas has at least won the games it should. And the 2 teams they lost to, they were the underdogs anyway. That no one wants to ride with that, but they've handled business based on even what Vegas thought they would handle. All right, so I want to see Arkansas handle business against a team it should be, and they should and probably will against San Antonio.
And they better.
Michigan is probably going to be ranked when Arkansas plays that team. They're 7-1, a big road win over number 11 Wisconsin last night to open up Big Ten play. I think they've got another Big Ten game at home this weekend. As Arkansas plays San Antonio on Saturday. I'm trying to remember who it is. It's a Big Ten opponent. Michigan needs to take care of that business, and then they'll be ranked when the polls come out, and it'll be a quad 1 win opportunity, the 3rd of the season for Arkansas. So what do I want to see? I want to see Arkansas handle business at home against a team it's favored to beat. They're perfect in those situations, including last night now. And then they've got to find a way to not just stay in contact and trail for 30-plus minutes, and in the 2 previous games for all 40. I want to see Arkansas not have these sluggish first halves where they fall behind early, can't knock down threes. They look like they can't. I want to see a little growth. And maybe you're seeing more of Jonas Adu on the court by the time we get to that Madison Square Garden game. Maybe you're seeing guys like Nelly Davis getting more comfortable in their role on the offense. Maybe you're seeing Boogie Flan take the next step and be consistent, because he was pretty consistent until the bad game against Illinois. Now you want to see him get back on that track and maintain that consistency. And then, a guy like Adu Theorio, I think, is going to bring the energy every night, and he's a veteran guy. Billy Richmond's been a pleasant surprise. He didn't have a great game last night. So Arkansas's got pieces. The individual pieces are there. We said it on Pick Trail. We're not predicting 3-0 over these next 3 games, including Miami. But you got to get over that hump. Arkansas did that on the road. Can they continue? I want to see a 2-0 these next 2 games. That's every Hog fan wants to see that. But while I won't predict that, I think I'm closer to feeling more comfortable to think Arkansas could go 2-0, including a win over Michigan, than I would have 24 hours ago. I would have said, man, it's going to be that's going to be tough sledding to think maybe better than 1-1.
I would like to see it as well. I mean, again, we're talking about this team getting better, moving forward, and you just got to keep racking up those wins. And another win over a Power 4 team, especially like Michigan, is going to do wonders for this team moving forward. Like you said, even when you talked about the net rankings, because we haven't mentioned this yet, but Arkansas debuted in those net rankings at number 51, and a lot of people went, whoa, oh my gosh, but that's because you broke it down. It's like you haven't gotten a quad 1 win or even a quad 2 win. Am I correct on that?
Right.
So they need that. They need that. And I think fans want to see that as well, especially we know the ceiling of this team. We know the talent on this year's team, and you have Coach Cal leading them. So they want to see that, and I would like to see that as well. And like you said, can they start a game a little better than they have? And I just want to see some kind of oomph, like, okay, we're going into this ball game and we're feeling really confident about ourselves. It just feels like you said, at least against those Power 4 opponents, they just start so flat, and then they're having to play catch up. And you just don't want to be in that situation of playing catch up. Kevin, let's talk about the SEC really quick, too. The SEC ACC Challenge, crazy number of wins for the SEC in that we can see who's the better conference if you just looked at Tuesday night's games. I think a shocker for a lot of people was Kentucky being the odd one out there, the odd man out, and falling to Clemson. And I know Vegas said it was going to be a close ball game. I think it was like the spread was like 1.5 or something. And so I know it was going to be a close one, but were you kind of shocked to see Kentucky fall to Clemson, or were you kind of expecting at least one domino to fall in the SEC?
Not surprised by anything in college basketball. It's a true road game. You're going up against another high major, one of the, the ACC is not what it used to be. Really, the best conferences in basketball right now are the SEC, Big 12, and Big 10. But they've still got some good teams, and it's still a respectable conference. No, I'm not surprised by it. Kentucky's going to have some growing pains, off to a great start, obviously in the one-loss column and a couple of quality wins in there, but, not surprised one bit. I am surprised in a 10-game slate against another high major conference that you were as good as 9-1. I mean, 7-3 would be, pretty outstanding. 8-2, but 9-1, you were that close to perfection in 10 games playing another league. I mean, that's not just dominance. That's, that's picking on.
That's complete annihilation.
Kind of stuff. You're a bully. This isn't fair.
I mean,
it feels like one of those.
They were bullying the ACC. Again, it was kind of crazy to watch those final scores come in and go, whoa, the SEC is good. Don't get us wrong. But, man, that was complete. Like you said, you can't even use domination. That was like annihilation, whatever you want to talk about. We'll see how the games go tonight as well. There's a few more tonight that they have on tap. So, but again, 9-1. It's just crazy to think about that. And so that shows that what we're talking about, what all these coaches were saying at SEC Media Days, this conference is no joke. Look at how many SEC teams are ranked in the top 25. It's just, again, great talent, good teams. It's going to be a absolute tough SEC conference slate this year for everybody, and that's not just including our, that's just everybody's just going to have it rough when it comes to SEC play this year, but we'll see how it goes.
Let's say it on the airwaves real quick.
Yeah.
Let's do it, and we'll take repercussions because by damn, I believe it. SEC basketball is stronger right now than SEC football. And you know how the SEC is in football. Football fans don't want to hear that, but I think it's actually true right now. Not that the SEC football is not outstanding. I think SEC basketball, if you were trying to make a relative comparison, is it a stronger point right now? We'll see where it settles closer to March. That'll matter more. But right now, comparing it, I'd say SEC basketball is actually, because forever SEC basketball has been a lower tier compared to some of the other power conferences, and you can make a case that some of the other power conferences were much weaker in football than they were in basketball. I think right now maybe the SEC is actually better in basketball than it is in football.
That's a big take right there. We'll see if it comes true because I think you have a definite point. We'll see. We'll see how many SEC teams officially get in that 12-team playoff, right? I think right now it's predicted to be 4, but again, I think you have a point.
Great.
I think you have a point. If we take it relative versus how many SEC teams get in the NCAA tournament, and you'd have to do it relative, but I think you have a good point there. We'll see what happens this season, but man, I hate to say it, but I kind of feel like I agree with you a little bit there. Again, we will see what happens.
Don't be afraid.
Kevin.
I know you're from Florida, and you got to go back to that state. I know. We live in places where it's just not safe to say that.
It isn't safe to say that here. I told. It isn't safe to say that.
We don't have the curtain of making our vote secret. I just voted into the public what I think, and so now everybody knows you did the same. Well, there it is.
We might just be really big basketball fans too, but don't hold that against us, okay, guys? Don't hold that against us, Kevin.
Guilty.
Thank you so much for joining me on the first ever full court press. That was so much fun. We're going to have Kevin on again later on in the season because we have to. He's just a blast to have on. But Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. And yeah, hopefully you'll join us next week for another edition of Full Court Press. Thanks guys for watching.